My name is Sophia Carter, the woman my powerful husband once called a defective product that needed to be recalled. After 10 years of living in Daniel Whitmore's shadow, I finally stood up and became the witness that brought his empire crashing down. I declared in front of hundreds of eyes in the courtroom, I wasn't a partner, I was a prop. And today, I will prove he built an entire dynasty on deception. Before I share my story, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever overcome hardship. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next. The champagne flute trembled in my hand as Daniel's fingers traced along my bare shoulder. Around us, 300 guests swirled through the Beverly Hills Hotel ballroom, their laughter creating a symphony of privilege I'd never quite learned to conduct. At 23, standing in a Vera Wang gown that cost more than my parents' annual income, I was supposed to feel like Cinderella at the ball. Instead, I felt like an architect's blueprint, carefully measured, precisely placed, waiting to be built into something I hadn't designed. "Smile, darling," Daniel whispered, his breath warm against my ear. "The photographer from Architectural Digest is watching." I lifted my chin, found the camera, and produced the smile I'd been practicing in mirrors for weeks. The flash burst white, capturing us in a moment of manufactured perfection. Daniel Whitmore, 38, real estate mogul with developments spanning from Malibu to Manhattan, and me, Sophia Carter, fresh out of USC with a master's in architecture and dreams bigger than any of his skyscrapers. "You'll be the most celebrated young architect in New York and Los Angeles," he murmured, turning me toward another cluster of guests. "I'll make sure the whole world knows your name." The words should have thrilled me. 6 months ago, when he'd first said them over dinner at Nobu, he'd seen my thesis project, a sustainable housing complex designed for low-income families, and proclaimed a genius. "You have vision," he'd said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I can give you the world to build on." Now, as he steered me through our reception, like a yacht through calm waters, I caught glimpses of myself in the gilded mirrors lining the walls. Each reflection showed a young woman drowning in tulle and expectations, her eyes searching for something just beyond the frame. My college roommate Jessica caught my arm near the dessert table. "You okay?" she asked, her voice low enough that the string quartet couldn't swallow it. "Perfect," I said, the word tasting like fondant, sweet, artificial, meant to cover something else. She squeezed my hand. "Your mom would be so proud." I blinked hard. Mom had died 2 years into my program, never seeing me graduate, never knowing I'd marry into one of California's most powerful families. Would she be proud? Or would she recognize what I was too naive to see, that I was trading my compass for someone else's map? The wedding coordinator appeared, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Whitmore, time for your speech?" Mrs. Whitmore. The name sat on me like an ill-fitting coat. Daniel guided me to the microphone, his hand firm on the small of my back. The room quieted, faces turning towards us like flowers to the sun. I'd written a speech about partnership, about building a life together. But as I looked out at the sea of strangers, Daniel's business associates, politicians, people whose names I'd been drilling into my memory for weeks, the words evaporated. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice steadier than my hands. When I met Daniel, I was just a student with big dreams and bigger sketches. He saw something in me I paused, catching his eye. There was something cold there. Something I'd glimpsed before, but always explained away as focus, ambition, the natural distance of a man who'd built an empire. "That I'm still discovering," I finished. And the room laughed, thinking it romantic. As we danced our first dance to "The Way You Look Tonight," Daniel's hand pressed against my spine, holding me close enough that the photographers would capture our intimacy, but far enough that I could see his face. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes tracked the room, cataloging who was watching, who was worth impressing, who might be useful later. "The Times photographer just arrived," he said, spinning me gracefully. "After this song, we'll do the cake cutting. Make sure you laugh. Joy photographs better than smiles." 10 years. That's how long it takes for dreams to calcify, for hope to fossilize into something you keep on a shelf but never touch. I stood in our Malibu kitchen, all marble and steel and views that stretched to Catalina on clear days, making Daniel's coffee exactly how he liked it. 2 sugars, oat milk, temperature precisely 160 degrees. I'd bought a thermometer specifically for this purpose in year 3, when he'd complained one too many times about inconsistency. At 33, I'd become an expert at many things. I knew which dress to wear to which charity function, how to make small talk with senators' wives, how to stand at Daniel's side during groundbreaking ceremonies, and smile like I contributed something beyond my presence. What I didn't know anymore was how to hold a drafting pencil without my hand shaking. The Palisades fundraiser is Thursday, Daniel said, entering the kitchen while scrolling through his phone. He took the coffee without looking up, without saying thank you. These small erosions of courtesy had happened so gradually, I'd stopped noticing when they began. Wear the blue Chanel. And do something about your hair, the gray is showing. I touched my temple unconsciously. 3 silver strands had appeared last month, and I'd made the mistake of thinking they made me look distinguished. I thought I might wear the black, the blue. He set down his cup, finally looking at me. The mayor's wife will be wearing black. I don't want you to match. How did he know what the mayor's wife would wear? The same way he knew everything, through a network of assistants and informants who kept him 3 steps ahead of everyone, including me. I was thinking, I began, gathering courage from somewhere deep, about the West Side Development Project. I had some ideas for the community spaces that might— Not now, Sophia. He was already moving toward his office. I have a call with Tokyo in 5 minutes. But you said last month we could discuss— I said we'd see. He paused in the doorway, his silhouette sharp against the morning light. Don't you have Pilates at 10? I did. Pilates at 10, lunch with the charity committee at 1, a fitting at 3 for a gala I didn't want to attend. My days were full of nothing, scheduled to the minute, designed to keep me busy without letting me build anything. After he left for the office, he still went in person, said it showed strength. I found myself in the guest room I'd converted to storage. Boxes lined the walls, labeled in my neat handwriting. USC projects, competition entries, dreams. I'd written that last one after too much wine one night in year 5, when I'd finally accepted that my drafting table would remain folded in the garage. I opened the nearest box, pulled out my thesis project. The paper had yellowed slightly, but the lines were still clean, still speaking a language I'd once been fluent in. My sustainable housing complex had won the Dean's Award. Professor Martinez had called it revolutionary in its simplicity, profound in its humanity. Where was that girl? The one who'd stayed up for 3 days straight, fueled by instant ramen and the belief that architecture could change lives? I traced the elevation drawings, remembering how my hand had moved with such certainty, how every line had purpose. My phone buzzed. Daniel's assistant, confirming my Pilates appointment and reminding me that the car would arrive at 9:45. I almost laughed. Even my free time wasn't free. That evening, Daniel came home late as usual. I'd made dinner, salmon with that honey glaze he liked, asparagus arranged just so. He ate while reading emails, occasionally making sounds that could have been approval or just acknowledgement that food was entering his system. I ran into Professor Martinez today, I said, testing the waters, at the coffee shop on Montana. Daniel's fingers paused over his phone. Oh. He asked if I was still designing, said he had a position open at his firm, thought I might be interested in— You embarrassed me. His voice was calm, which was worse than anger. My wife, taking a junior position at some boutique firm? What would people think? That I'm using my degree? That I'm contributing something? He set down his phone, gave me his full attention for the first time all day. You contribute plenty. The Fletcher Foundation raised $2 million at the gala you organized. That's contribution. That's party planning, Daniel. I'm an architect. You were a student who drew pretty pictures? There's a difference. He resumed eating. The conversation closed. Clear your schedule for next Tuesday. We're having dinner with the governor. The divorce papers look so innocent, sitting there on our kitchen island between the fruit bowl and the mail I'd sorted that morning. Just a manila folder, slightly thick, with a post-it note on top in Daniel's precise handwriting. We need to talk. He'd timed it perfectly, of course. I'd just returned from my annual mammogram, the one where they'd found a suspicious shadow that turned out to be nothing. I'd texted him from the hospital, relieved, thinking he'd want to know. He'd read the message but hadn't responded. Now I understood why. Sit, he said, gesturing to the bar stool across from him. He'd positioned himself with the morning light behind him, casting his face in shadow while illuminating mine. Even now, he was directing the scene. I remained standing. What is this? Don't be dramatic, Sophia. You know what it is. My hands found the counter's edge, gripping the marble that had cost more than most people's cars. I don't understand. Of course you do. He opened the folder, revealing documents marked with colored tabs. 10 years is a good run. You've played your part well. But I need something different now. Something different? The words came out strangled. I'm not a car lease, Daniel. He actually smiled at that. No, you're not. A car would have retained more value. The cruelty of it hit me physically, like a slap. I sank onto the stool, my legs suddenly unable to support me. Is there someone else? Does it matter? He slid papers toward me. I've been generous. The Brooklyn apartment is yours, plus a settlement that will keep you comfortable. All you have to do is sign Brooklyn. 3,000 miles from everyone I knew, from the life I'd built? No, the life that had been built around me. This is my home. This is my house, he corrected, as is the Aspen cabin, the Manhattan penthouse, and the vineyard in Napa. Your name was never on anything, remember? For tax purposes. For tax purposes. How many things had I agreed to for tax purposes, for appearances, for the greater good of Daniel's empire? What about my work with the foundations, the committees? They'll find someone else. He checked his watch. I have a meeting in an hour. The movers will come on Monday. Monday? That's 3 days. More than enough time to pack. Take what's yours, leave what's mine. The lawyers have an itemized list if you're confused. I laughed, a sharp sound that surprised us both. 10 years? And you're giving me 3 days? I'm giving you a new beginning. He stood, buttoning his jacket. You should thank me. 33 is still young enough to start over. Barely, I mean. Don't. The word came out stronger than I felt. Don't pretend this is some favor. His expression hardened. Fine. You want honesty? You've served your purpose. The young architect wife was useful when I was building my reputation as a patron of the arts, but I'm beyond that now. I need a partner who can navigate Washington, not someone who still dreams about building homeless shelters. You said my designs were genius. I said what I needed to say. He moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Sophia? Don't embarrass yourself trying to resurrect that little architecture career. No one's going to hire a 33-year-old housewife who hasn't touched CAD software in a decade. That dream died years ago. You just refused to bury it. After he left, I sat in the silence of his kitchen, staring at the papers. My signature lines were highlighted in yellow, cheerful and bright. On the counter, my phone buzzed with reminders. Tennis lesson at 2. Dinner reservations at Craig's. Friday's fitting at Barney's. I canceled them all. That night, I found myself in my storage room again, but this time with purpose. If I only had 3 days, I needed to decide what mattered. The boxes felt heavier now, weighted with a decade of deferred dreams. I pulled out portfolio after portfolio, spreading them across the floor like evidence of a life I'd almost lived. At the bottom of one box, folded carefully in tissue paper, was something I'd forgotten. My first drafting pencil, the one my mother had given me when I'd been accepted to USC. For drawing your future, she'd said. I held it up to the light, still sharp. The call came at 2 a.m. Seattle time. I'd been in Brooklyn for exactly 1 week, sleeping on an air mattress in an apartment that smelled like someone else's life, when my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. Sophia? It's Ethan Reed. The name pulled me from half sleep like a hook. Ethan from studio class. Ethan who'd won the Rome Prize. Ethan who'd asked me to be his partner for the final project senior year. I'd chosen Daniel's promises instead. How did you get this number? Jessica gave it to me, said you might need a friend. His voice hadn't changed, still carrying that hint of Virginia mountains underneath the professional polish. I heard about everything. I sat up, pulling my knees to my chest. Define everything. Daniel's press release said you were taking time to find yourself, or some bullshit. I know his PR speak when I hear it. Through my window, Brooklyn sprawled gray and indifferent. What do you want, Ethan? To offer you a job. The laugh escaped before I could stop it. You too? Going to save the fallen socialite? Going to hire a brilliant architect who's been benched too long? His tone grew serious. I have a project in Seattle. Historic neighborhood restoration, mixed use, community focused. I need someone who understands that buildings are about more than profit margins. I haven't worked in 10 years, I know. You think you're the only one who's kept tabs? I saw your thesis project, Sophia. That kind of vision doesn't disappear. It just goes dormant. I closed my eyes. Daniel said no one would hire me. Daniel's an ass who wouldn't recognize real talent if it submitted a blueprint for his own ego. The first genuine smile in weeks tugged at my lips. I can't just fly to Seattle. Why not? What's keeping you in Brooklyn? I looked around the empty apartment, at the boxes I hadn't unpacked, at the life I hadn't chosen. Nothing. There's a flight at 7 tomorrow morning. I'll have a ticket waiting. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Possibility. It terrified me more than Daniel's cruelty, more than the divorce papers, more than starting over. Hope was dangerous when you taught yourself not to feel it. I found Ethan at Pike Place Market, sketching the fish vendors. He looked older, of course, weren't we all? But his hands moved with the same quick certainty I remembered. When he saw me, he stood, and for a moment we just looked at each other across a decade of different choices. You came, he said. You called. He smiled, and suddenly we were 22 again, arguing about cantilevers and compression in the studio at 3 a.m. Come on, let me show you the site. The project was in Georgetown, an industrial neighborhood fighting to maintain its character against the tide of gentrification. Warehouses stood like old soldiers, brick and timber bones waiting to be either honored or erased. Ethan walked me through blocks of possibility, his vision unfolding with each gesture. We're not just restoring buildings, he explained, stopping at a corner where art studios neighbored metal shops. We're preserving a community. The artists, the makers, the families who've been here for generations, they're the real architecture. We just provide the framework. Daniel would call this naive, I said, then caught myself. Sorry, I'm still deprogramming. Ethan turned to face me. It's okay. 10 years of being told your dreams are childish leaves marks. We ended up in his office, a converted warehouse space filled with drafting tables, models, and the controlled chaos of active creation. Young architects worked in clusters, their energy palpable. On the walls, projects in various stages covered every surface, not monuments to ego, but spaces designed for living. This would be your project, Ethan said, spreading plans across a table. The corner lot, mixed use, affordable housing above, community spaces below. The neighborhood wants a place that serves everyone, kids, artists, elderly residents who've been here since the shipyard days. I traced the site boundaries, feeling rusty gears beginning to turn. The zoning must be a nightmare. Already handled, we have 6 months to deliver initial designs. We? Your team. 3 juniors, eager to learn from someone who understands that architecture is about more than aesthetics. He paused. That is, if you're interested. Ethan, I appreciate this, but I gestured at myself. At the designer clothes that suddenly felt like costume pieces. I'm not who I was. No, he agreed. You're someone who survived Daniel Whitmore. That takes strength most people don't have. The news alert came while I was reviewing Seattle building codes, my first real work in a decade. Whitmore Industries announces expansion into Pacific Northwest. My stomach dropped as I read further. Daniel was coming to Seattle, bringing his particular brand of development to the city I'd just begun to call refuge. You okay? I looked up to find Monica Alvarez, Ethan's legal counsel, standing in my cubicle doorway. We'd met briefly during my hiring, but something in her expression suggested she understood more than our casual acquaintance should allow. Fine, I lied, closing the alert. No, you're not. She entered uninvited, settling into my spare chair with the confidence of someone who'd faced down bigger problems than social niceties. Daniel Whitmore doesn't expand anywhere without trying to crush existing competition, especially competition that employs his ex-wife. How did you know about your connection? Honey, I make it my business to know everything about the men who think they own this city. She leaned forward. I also know he destroyed the Riverfront Arts Collective in Portland last year. Bought the building out from under them. Claimed it was just business. The lead architect on that project? She just left her position at his firm to start her own practice. My hands felt cold. Are you saying he's here because of me? I'm saying Daniel Whitmore doesn't believe in coincidences. Neither should you. That night, Ethan and I worked late reviewing the community feedback from our initial presentations. The Georgetown residents had been cautiously optimistic, their hopes tempered by years of promises broken by other developers. I was deep in sketching when my phone rang. Unknown number, Seattle area code. Mrs. Whitmore? The voice was professionally warm. This is Patricia Chen from the Seattle Times. We're doing a piece on your husband's new waterfront project. Ex-husband, I corrected. Of course. My apologies. We'd love to get your perspective on his vision for Seattle's development future. I could smell the trap from here. No comment. Surely you have thoughts about the proposed demolition of historic buildings in Georgetown? My blood chilled. What demolition? Oh, you haven't heard? Whitmore Industries just submitted plans to the city? The entire block between Airport and Lucille. Isn't that near your current project? I hung up. That son of a bitch, Ethan said when I told him. He pulled up the city planning website, and there it was. A proposal for a 30-story mixed-use tower, right in the heart of the neighborhood we were trying to preserve. The renderings were sleek, modern, everything Daniel built, structures that photographed beautifully and lived coldly. He's trying to force us out, I said. He's trying to force you back, Monica corrected, appearing with a stack of papers. Look at the proposed timeline. Aggressive enough to pressure the city, but with just enough delays built in for negotiation. He's not here to build, he's here to bully. The next 2 weeks were a blur of city council meetings, community organizers, and sleepless nights. Daniel's team moved through Seattle like a plague of expensive suits, promising jobs and tax revenue while quietly buying options on every available property. I was leaving a particularly brutal zoning hearing when I saw him. Daniel, standing by a town car, looking exactly as he had the day he'd handed me divorce papers, controlled, cold, certain of victory. Sophia, he said my name like he still owned it. You look tired. What do you want? To help you avoid embarrassment. Again? He stepped closer, and I fought the instinct to retreat. This little experiment of yours with Reed, it's touching. But we both know how it ends. You're not equipped for this fight. You don't know what I'm equipped for. He smiled. That particular expression that used to make me feel small. I know you spent 10 years planning parties while I built empires. Go back to Brooklyn, Sophia. Take up watercolors or wine tasting. Leave the real work to those of us who understand it. Is that a threat? It's a kindness. The last one you'll get from me. As his car pulled away, Monica appeared beside me. You okay? No. I watched the taillights disappear. But I'm not running. She smiled, fierce and understanding. Good, because I've been waiting years for someone with enough inside knowledge to help me take him down. What do you mean? I mean, Daniel Whitmore destroyed my sister's construction company 5 years ago. Used the same tactics, sudden expansion, price manipulation, strategic pressure until she had to sell for pennies on the dollar. She handed me a business card. When you're ready to fight back, really fight back, call me. Daniel's not the only one who keeps records. The storage unit in Belltown smelled like dust and old paper. Monica led me through rows of boxes, each labeled with dates and project names I half recognized from Daniel's dinner conversation over the years. My sister was meticulous, Monica said, pulling out a file. She documented everything, every permit suddenly delayed, every inspector who showed up with impossible demands, every anonymous complaint that triggered investigations. The pattern was always the same. I opened the file, seeing forms and emails that looked frustratingly legitimate individually but painted a damning picture collectively. This must have taken years to compile. She died, still trying to prove it. Monica's voice carried old anger. Heart attack at 43. Stress-induced, the doctors said. Daniel, induced, I say. We spent hours going through documents, and with each box, I recognized more. The shell companies mentioned in passing, the political connections Daniel cultivated like a garden, the strategic donations that always preceded favorable zoning decisions. None of this is enough, I said finally. It's all circumstantial. Which is why I need you. Monica pulled out a tablet showing bank records. These transactions, I can't trace them fully, but you lived with him. You might recognize patterns I can't see. I studied the screen, dates and amounts blurring until… there. That one, February 2019. 2 days before the Coastal Commission reversed their decision on the Malibu project. You're sure? He took me to Catalina that weekend. Said it was spontaneous, but he'd been tense about the commission for weeks. When we came back, he was different, relaxed, like he knew something had changed. Monica made notes. What else? For the next 3 days, I became an archaeologist of my own life, excavating memories I'd buried. The dinner parties where city council members got drunk and chatty, the golf weekends with judges whose names I'd been instructed to remember, the charity auctions where permits got discussed between paddle raises. Then Clara found us. She appeared at my apartment on a Thursday evening, rain-soaked and nervous. Blonde hair darker than in the society photos, designer clothes replaced with jeans and an oversized sweater. Without the makeup and styling, she looked younger, more vulnerable. You're Sophia, she said. It wasn't a question. How did you find me? I've been watching Daniel's moves. When he comes to destroy someone, I try to warn them. She shivered. Can I come in? Against my better judgment, I let her in. She sat on my second-hand couch like she'd never seen furniture that didn't cost 5 figures, holding the tea I offered with both hands. You were his mistress, I said. Not accusing, just stating fact. I was a lot of things. She looked up, and her eyes were the same cold blue as Daniel's, including his sister. The mug slipped from my hands, shattering on the floor. Tea spread across the hardwood like a confession. Half-sister, Clara continued, not moving to help clean up. Same father, different mothers. The family paid mine to disappear when I was born. Keep the bloodline clean, the fortune undiluted. But you and Daniel found each other when I was 22. He didn't know who I was at first. When he found out, she wrapped her arms around herself. He said it didn't matter, that we were above conventional morality, that power made its own rules. I felt sick. Why are you telling me this? Because he's escalating. The Seattle move isn't about business, it's about you. You're the first one who left him instead of being discarded. He can't tolerate that. So, what do you want? To end this. She reached into her bag, pulled out a flash drive. 5 years of recordings, conversations, transactions, connections between his public developments and private payoffs. Enough to destroy him. Why now? Because last week, he told me about his next project. After he crushes you here, he's moving to Denver. There's a woman there, an architect like you, young, idealistic, talented, her voice broke. I can't watch him do it again. I took the drive, its weight disproportionate to its size. This could destroy you too. I'm already destroyed. Have been since the day I learned my own brother saw me as just another asset to leverage. She stood. There's a reporter at the Washington Post, David Kim. He's been investigating Daniel for 2 years, but could never get deep enough. This will give him everything he needs. What about you? Where will you go? Somewhere, Daniel's name means nothing. If such a place exists. She moved toward the door, then paused. He used to talk about you, you know. Said you were his greatest creation, the perfect wife he'd molded from raw potential. It enraged him when you started remembering who you were before him. After she left, I sat with the drive in my hand, understanding I held a weapon that could end everything. Daniel's empire, his reputation, possibly his freedom. But using it meant exposing myself too, admitting I'd been blind to corruption happening in my own home. The Washington Post story broke on a Tuesday morning. The Whitmore Files, a dynasty built on deception, sprawled across the front page of the business section. David Kim had worked magic with Clara's recordings, weaving them into a narrative that read like a thriller but carried the weight of meticulous journalism. I watched from Ethan's office as the internet exploded. Daniel's PR team went into overdrive, issuing denials and threats of lawsuits, but Clara had been thorough. Every claim had documentation, every accusation came with audio. By noon, 3 city councilmen had resigned. By evening, the FBI had raided Whitmore Industries' headquarters. You should be celebrating, Ethan said, finding me on the roof garden where I'd retreated to escape the chaos. Should I? I watched Seattle's skyline, thinking about all the buildings with Daniel's fingerprints on them. 20 years of corruption, and I lived right in the middle of it. What does that make me? A survivor, Monica said, joining us, who's doing more to stop him than anyone else could. The summons came the next day. Not for arrest, for testimony. The federal prosecutor, a woman named Sarah Chen, who looked like she'd been waiting her whole career for a case like this, laid out what they needed from me. You're not a target, Mrs. Carter, but you're a witness to patterns of behavior, meetings, conversations that corroborate the financial evidence. Whitmore, I corrected automatically, then caught myself. Actually, no, Carter. Sophia Carter. She smiled. Miss Carter, then? We'll need you to testify about what you observed during your marriage. The meetings, the conversations, any unusual financial activities you witnessed? I don't know if I can. He's hired Kellerman and Associates, she interrupted. They're already building a defense that you're a bitter ex-wife trying to destroy him out of spite. If you don't testify, that narrative wins. The trial was set for 6 months out, but the court of public opinion convened immediately. Daniel's team painted me as a gold digger who'd turned vindictive when the money dried up. They released photos from our marriage, me at galas, dripping in jewels, looking every inch the trophy wife they claimed I'd always been. Let them, Monica advised when I showed her the latest hit piece. Every photo they release shows you standing in his shadow. The jury will see what you gave up. 3 weeks before the trial, something unexpected happened. Other women started coming forward. Not mistresses, architects, developers, business owners who had been crushed by Daniel's tactics over the years. They'd seen Clara's courage, my testimony announced in the press, and found their own voices. The trial itself was a blur of dark suits and harsh lights. Daniel sat at the defense table like he was closing a deal, confident and controlled. He'd aged in the months since the story broke, but it only made him look more distinguished. The media loved it. The fallen titan maintaining dignity in disgrace. I took the stand on day 3. Daniel's lawyer, a shark named Harrison Kellerman, tried to shake me immediately. Miss Carter, isn't it true you were unemployed when you met my client? I was a graduate student, living on loans and ramen, as you once told a reporter. Living like most graduate students. And then Mr. Whitmore appeared, offered you a life of luxury, and you took it, correct? I found Daniel's eyes across the courtroom. He was almost smiling, certain I'd crumble like I always had under pressure. He offered me a future where my designs would matter, I said clearly, where I could build things that help people. Instead, I got a decade of silence and charity committees. But you enjoyed the benefits, didn't you? The houses, the cars, the social position. I enjoyed believing my husband when he said, wait. I enjoyed thinking patience was an investment in our shared future. I straightened. I stopped enjoying anything when I realized I wasn't a partner. I was a prop. The prosecutor, Sarah, took over. Miss Carter, please tell the court about the dinner on March 15, 2019. I described it all, the federal judge who'd gotten too drunk, the conversation about reciprocal favors, the way Daniel had steered talk toward upcoming rulings. I explained the pattern. Donations, dinners, decisions, always in that order. Did you understand at the time what was happening? I understood my husband was very good at getting what he wanted. I didn't understand the cost until much later. On the 4th day, they played Clara's recordings. Daniel's voice filled the courtroom, cold and casual, as he discussed bribes like grocery lists. I watched his composure finally crack, his jaw tightening with each damning word. The moment that broke him came from an unexpected source. One of his own executives, granted immunity, testified about the systematic destruction of competitors. He produced internal memos where Daniel explicitly outlined plans to eliminate the architectural irritant in Seattle, meaning me and Ethan's firm. He called her Defective product, the executive read from an email, said he needed to recall her before she damaged the brand further. The verdict came on a Thursday afternoon in late spring, guilty on all counts. I stood in the courthouse lobby, watching through glass doors as federal marshals led Daniel away. He didn't look back, didn't search for my face in the crowd. Even in defeat, I remained invisible to him. It's over, Monica said, squeezing my shoulder. But it wasn't, not really. Endings are rarely that clean. The real conclusion came 6 months later, at the ribbon cutting for our Georgetown project. The building rose from the corner lot like hope itself. brick and timber honoring the neighborhood's past, solar panels, and rain gardens pointing toward its future. The affordable housing units were already full. Artists and families and elderly residents who'd thought the city had forgotten them. "You did this," Ethan said, handing me the ceremonial scissors. "We did this," I corrected, but took them anyway. The crowd was bigger than expected. Former Whitmore Industries employees who'd found new work with firms that valued integrity. Women who'd reached out after the trial, sharing their own stories of dreams deferred by men who thought they owned the world. Clara was there, in the back, wearing sunglasses and a smile that looked like it was still learning how to be genuine. But the person who mattered most stood in the front row. Professor Martinez, now in his 70s, holding a rolled-up set of plans. "Miss Carter," he said after the ceremony, using my real name like a gift, "I believe these belong to you." I unrolled them carefully. My thesis project, the one that had started everything, but underneath, new pages. Plans adapted for modern codes, structural calculations updated, a vision refined but not replaced. "How did you?" "I've been working on them," he admitted, "since I heard you were back in the field. There's a lot in South Seattle that could use this design, if you're interested." "I'm interested," I said, meaning it more than I'd meant anything in years. Phoenix Design Studio opened the following month. Not the grandiose firm Daniel had once promised to build around me, but something better. A collective of architects who understood that buildings were about more than profit margins. Our motto, etched in reclaimed wood above the entrance, "From the ashes, we build." The Times ran a feature on our 1-year anniversary. The reporter asked how it felt to go from being Mrs. Daniel Whitmore to leading one of Seattle's most innovative firms. "I was never Mrs. Daniel Whitmore," I told her. "I was Sophia Carter, playing a role I didn't write. Now, I'm just Sophia Carter, and that's enough." Clara visited on a rainy Tuesday, looking healthier than I'd ever seen her. She'd been living in Montana, she said, working with horses and trying to remember who she was before Daniel convinced her she was nothing without him. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for believing me, for using what I gave you." "You saved yourself," I reminded her. "I just held the door open." We talked for hours, two women who'd survived the same storm differently, but emerged on the same shore. When she left, she hugged me, awkward but sincere, like she was learning how to mean it. The letter from Daniel came through his lawyers, of course. He was serving his time in a minimum security facility, teaching business classes to other inmates. He wanted me to know he wasn't angry, that he understood I'd done what I thought necessary, that he hoped I'd found whatever I'd been looking for. I burned it without responding. Some conversations are better left closed. On the second anniversary of the verdict, Seattle announced a new initiative, the Ethical Development Award, recognizing firms that prioritize community benefit alongside profit. Phoenix Design won the inaugural honor. Standing at the podium, looking out at a room full of colleagues who saw buildings as more than investments, I thought about the girl who'd stood at another podium 13 years earlier, drowning in tulle and someone else's expectations. "Architecture," I said, finding my voice strong and steady, "is about creating spaces where people can become who they're meant to be." For too long, I forgot that included the architect herself. But the beautiful thing about building is that it's never too late to start over, to lay a new foundation, to reach for a different sky. The applause was warm, genuine, nothing like the performed appreciation of Daniel's galas. In the audience, I saw the next generation of architects, young women with big dreams and bigger sketches, ready to build worlds that included everyone. After the ceremony, a young intern approached, nervous but determined. "Miss Carter, I'm starting my thesis project and I was wondering, could you look at my plans?" I smiled, remembering Professor Martinez making the same offer to a 22-year-old who thought she needed someone else's power to build her dreams. "Let's see what you've got," I said, and meant it. That night, I stood on my apartment balcony, a modest place in Capitol Hill, nothing like the Malibu mansion, but entirely mine. Seattle spread before me, a city of possibility lit by more than spotlights. Somewhere out there, Daniel sat in a cell of his own making. Somewhere else, Clara was learning to trust again. And here I was, 36 years old, finally the architect of my own life. The city lights blurred as tears came, not of sadness, but of recognition. I'd spent so long in shadows I'd forgotten what my own light looked like. But it was there all along, waiting beneath the spotlight's glare, ready to illuminate something real. Tomorrow, I'd review those thesis plans. Next week, we'd break ground on 3 new projects. Next month, who knew? The future was unbuilt, unscripted, undecided. And for the first time in 13 years, that felt like freedom.